My best friend walked in while I was changing, but she didn't turn away. I was standing in front of my bedroom mirror, tears streaming down my face as I stared at the scars that mapped my body like a painful geography of shame. My trembling fingers traced the raised lines on my arms, the burn marks on my shoulder, the cigarette burns scattered across my ribs like cruel constellations. I had locked my door. I always locked my door. But Maya had a key I'd given her years ago, when we were just two carefree girls who believed friendship could conquer anything. I heard the door click open behind me and my heart stopped. I was completely exposed, standing there in nothing but my underwear. Every secret I'd fought so hard to hide laid bare under the harsh afternoon light streaming through my window. My first instinct was to grab something, anything, to cover myself. My hands flew to the nearest shirt, my breath catching in panicked gasps as shame flooded through every cell of my body. But Maya didn't gasp. She didn't turn away. She didn't apologize and back out of the room like any normal person would. Instead, she stood there in my doorway, her backpack sliding slowly off her shoulder and hitting the floor with a soft thud. Her eyes met mine in the mirror, and what I saw there wasn't pity or disgust or horror. It was recognition. It was understanding. It was the kind of knowing that only comes from walking through your own hell. I'd known Maya since we were 7 years old, since that first day of second grade when she'd shared her crayons with me because I'd forgotten mine at home. We'd grown up together, weathered every storm of adolescence side by side, celebrated every victory and mourned every loss as if they belonged to both of us equally. She was the sister I'd never had, the constant in a life that had been anything but stable. But there were things I'd never told her, things I'd never told anyone. The truth about my father's rage, about my mother's inability to protect me, about the nights I'd spent hiding in my closet while violence echoed through our house like thunder. Maya walked slowly into my room, and I watched her approach in the mirror, my body frozen between the urge to run and the desperate need to be seen. She stopped just behind me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence. And then, without a word, she lifted her own shirt over her head. My breath caught as she revealed her own map of survival. Long, thin scars ran across her back in parallel lines, some old and faded, others still pink and angry. There was a burn mark on her lower back, shaped like an iron. Bruises in various stages of healing painted her ribs in shades of purple and yellow. We stood there together, two broken girls reflected in the same mirror, and suddenly the silence that had always existed between our words made perfect sense. All those times Maya had worn long sleeves in summer, all those excuses about clumsiness and accidents, all those moments when I'd catch her staring into space, with eyes that held too much pain for someone our age. She'd been fighting the same battle I was, just in a different house with different monsters wearing different faces. My legs gave out and I sank to the floor, my back against the bed, my carefully constructed walls finally crumbling under the weight of being truly seen. Maya sat down beside me and we didn't speak. We didn't need to. She reached for my hand and her fingers intertwined with mine, our scars pressing against each other like pieces of a puzzle finally, finding their match. I'd spent so many years believing I was alone, that my pain was a unique burden I had to carry in silence, that no one could possibly understand the shame that lived in my bones. The first time my father had hurt me, I was 9 years old. I'd accidentally spilled juice on his newspaper, and his hand had come down across my face so fast I didn't even see it coming. My mother had been in the kitchen, and she'd heard everything, but she never came. That was the day I learned that some pain is witnessed and still ignored, that some suffering happens in plain sight and people still choose to look away. From that day forward, I became an expert at hiding. I learned to wear the right clothes, to fake the right smiles, to construct a version of myself that no one would question. Maya squeezed my hand, and I turned to look at her, really look at her, and saw my own story written in her eyes. Her father was an alcoholic who turned mean when he drank, which was every single night. Her mother had left when she was 6, leaving her alone with a man who blamed his daughter for every disappointment in his life. She'd learned to be invisible, to take up as little space as possible, to endure in silence because screaming only made it worse. We had sat next to each other in countless classes, studied together for countless tests, slept over at each other's houses dozens of times, and never once had either of us found the courage to speak our truth. But something shifted in that moment on my bedroom floor. something fundamental and irreversible. Maya turned to face me fully, and I saw tears sliding down her cheeks, mirroring my own. She spoke for the first time since walking into my room, her voice rough and broken, but somehow still strong. She told me that she'd known, on some level, that I was hurting. She'd recognized the signs because she lived them every day. The way I flinched at sudden movements. The way I always had an explanation ready for every mark on my skin. The way I sometimes stared at nothing with eyes that were somewhere else entirely. Somewhere dark and painful. I finally found my own voice, and the words that came out were ones I'd never said out loud before. I told her everything. About the years of abuse, about the fear that had become my constant companion, about the nights I'd considered ending it all because the pain felt too heavy to carry one more day. I told her about the razor blades I'd hidden in my bathroom, about the pills I'd counted and recounted, about the detailed plans I'd made for my own escape. And Maya listened without judgment, without trying to fix me or save me or tell me it would all be okay. She just listened, bearing witness to my pain the way I was now bearing witness to hers. We talked for hours, sitting on that bedroom floor as the afternoon light faded into evening and then into night. We shared stories we'd never told anyone, examined scars we'd shown no one, and spoke names we'd only whispered in our darkest moments. Maya told me about the night her father had broken her arm and then refused to take her to the hospital until the next day, telling the doctor she'd fallen off her bike. I told her about the time my father had locked me in the basement for an entire weekend because I'd gotten a B on a math test instead of an A. But we also talked about something else, something that felt revolutionary in its simplicity. We talked about survival, about the fact that we were still here, still breathing, still fighting even when every day felt like a war. Maya looked at me with fierce determination in her eyes and told me that she refused to let her father win, that every day she woke up and chose to keep living was an act of rebellion, a middle finger to the man who wanted to break her. Her words ignited something inside me that I'd thought was long dead hope, tiny and fragile, but undeniably alive. We made a pact that night, Maya and I, sitting on my bedroom floor with our scars on display and our truths finally spoken. We promised each other that we would fight, not alone anymore, but together. We would be each other's witnesses, each other's proof that we mattered, that our pain was real, that we deserved better than what we'd been given. Maya told me about a counselor at school she'd been too afraid to approach, and I told her about a hotline number I'd saved in my phone but never called. We decided that we would do it together, that we would take the first terrifying steps toward getting help. The road ahead wasn't easy. It took weeks to gather the courage to actually speak to the school counselor, and when we finally did, sitting side by side in her office, the words came out in broken fragments that barely made sense. But she listened, she believed us, and she helped us start the process of getting help, of involving authorities who could protect us, of finding resources we didn't know existed. My father was eventually arrested, and I went to live with my grandmother across town. Maya's father was court-ordered into rehab and anger management, and she stayed with her aunt for a while. The healing didn't happen overnight. There were setbacks and nightmares and days when getting out of bed felt impossible. But through it all, Maya was there and I was there for her. We attended therapy sessions, sometimes together and sometimes separately. We learned that our scars didn't define us, but that they were part of our story. Evidence of battles we'd survived. We learned that asking for help wasn't weakness, but the bravest thing we could do. If this story has touched your heart in any way, if you've ever felt alone in your pain or struggled with secrets too heavy to carry, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Your engagement helps these stories reach others who might desperately need to hear them, who might need to know that they're not alone. Sometimes a story can save a life, and your simple act of pressing that like button could be the reason this message reaches someone standing on the edge of giving up. Years have passed since that afternoon when Maya walked into my room and didn't turn away. We're in college now, studying psychology, because we both want to help others who are walking the path we once walked. The scars are still there on our bodies, faded but present, permanent reminders of where we've been, but they don't define us anymore. They're just part of our history, chapters in a much longer story that's still being written. Sometimes I think about that moment in front of the mirror, about the shame I felt being so exposed and vulnerable, and I realize now that it was the moment everything changed. The moment my life split into before and after. Before I was drowning in silence and shame, convinced that my suffering had to be borne alone. After, I learned that there is profound power in being seen, in allowing someone to witness your pain without trying to hide it. Maya and I talk often about that day, about the courage it took for her to stand there and reveal her own scars, to offer me her vulnerability as a gift. She told me later that she'd suspected for years that I was being hurt at home, but she'd been too afraid to ask, too consumed by her own survival to reach out. Walking into my room that day wasn't an accident. She'd been standing outside my door for several minutes, hearing my quiet sobs, and she'd made a choice. She chose to use the key I'd given her. She chose to walk in instead of walking away. She chose connection over comfort. Before this story ends, I want to ask you something important. If you've ever been that friend who noticed but stayed silent, or if you're currently that person who's suffering in silence, please take a moment to comment below. You don't have to share details if you're not ready, but sometimes just typing "I understand" or "I'm here" can create a connection that reminds us we're not alone. Your comment might be exactly what someone else needs to see today. The most important lesson I've learned through all of this is that shame thrives in silence and isolation. The monsters that hurt us want us to stay quiet, to hide our scars, to believe that we're the only ones suffering. But when we find the courage to be seen, when we connect with others who understand our pain, we break the power that shame holds over us. Maya didn't turn away when she saw my scars because she recognized them as her own. In witnessing each other's pain, we found a way out of the darkness. I still have hard days, we both do. Healing from trauma isn't linear, and there are moments when the past reaches out and tries to pull us back into old patterns of thinking and feeling. But now when those moments come, I don't face them alone. I have Maya and she has me. And together, we're stronger than either of us could ever be on our own. We've built a friendship that's based on radical honesty and unconditional acceptance, a safe space where we can be completely ourselves without fear of judgment. To anyone reading this who carries scars they're afraid to show, who holds secrets that feel too shameful to speak, who believes they have to survive their pain alone, I want you to know something. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to have someone stand beside you and say, "Me too. I understand. You're not alone. Your pain is real. Your story matters, and there is no shame in needing help." The bravest thing you can do is reach out, speak up, and let someone in. It might feel impossible, but I promise you, on the other side of that fear is a life worth fighting for. Maya taught me that by refusing to turn away, and now I'm passing that lesson on to you. Don't turn away from yourself. Don't turn away from the possibility of healing. And if you see someone struggling, be the person who walks in instead of walking away. Be the person who stays. Be the Maya that someone desperately needs.